Let me begin by making an observation. I was thinking about the meeting that we just had and all the time that's been committed by this board and our volunteers and the staff that are here. And I just want to make an observation and comment that these meetings do go on. It does take up and consume a lot of time. Yet everybody's here willingly and doing a real good job. And I want to continue to encourage you and really express my gratitude to all of you. The amount of work that you're putting in here is really, really appreciated. Additionally, I also appreciate all the support we've been getting from all the respective department chairs. We met with the Board of Ed the other day, and subsequent to that meeting, I've had a couple conversations with the chairman of the Board of Education, and their willingness to try to cooperate and to help us forge a good budget for our town. So I want to acknowledge them. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that while sometimes we go through this process and we start seeing things and we identify opportunities perhaps that we might think we should pursue, we really do as a finance board need to be sensitive to the human element and try to remember that we're not in this role to talk about personnel, hiring, firing, any of that sort. That's not in our precept. We're here for the financial aspect, and so let's be respectful for that, just in case. With that said, I'd like to move along in our agenda and start with the first item, which is guests and audience comments. Are there any guest or audience comments before we begin? Being that there are none, we'll move forward with our agenda for this evening. We're going to spend the major amount of time today speaking with our Director of Public Works and talk about that element, because we had a number of questions that we asked Beth to discuss with us. I do want to do a couple of housekeeping items before that, though. I want to make note that I made a change. So given all the time that you've committed to this meeting, we have in April, we had, it looked like 2 meetings on the same date. Not the same date, within the same week. The first was the Board of Finance on the 8th, and then we had the public hearing on the 10th. What I decided to do is cancel the Board of Finance meeting and combine it with the one that we had for the public hearing on the 10th. So just to make it a little easier. I'm letting you know that in advance if you want to make that adjustment to your calendar. Okay, let's move forward. I believe that you have a presentation you want to share with us?
Yes, Cindy came to me with questions that you had, so we prepared the presentation to go through and address some of it.
So if I may, excuse me to interrupt you, can you also direct us to the section of the binder where all of the Public Works information is located?
Their operating budget begins on page 131 in tab 2.
Thank you. You can continue.
All right, I'll start with the challenges that we're facing currently. There's several competing needs and projects that we have. September storm damage, approximately $3.7 million in damages, which is FEMA eligible, so we've been working with FEMA staff pretty significantly right now, helping them review the damaged areas, providing the paperwork. Very little remediation has been done at this point, but a challenge is equipment wear and tear and future maintenance freeze for the storm remediation. We also are challenged with trees. There's well over 1,500 trees in town that are dying from both the gypsy moth and the ash borer. We have the transfer station implementing protocols to ensure that revenue is being collected in the necessary locations. We have the existing ongoing infrastructure projects, the Foxtown Bridge, Johnsonville Bridge, and the completion of Petticoat Lane. We also have our usual annual summer work, drainage maintenance, overhead tree trimming, roadside mowing, and street sweeping. The challenge is our staffing and equipment limitations. limited staff for summer work. Staff is prohibited from taking vacation during winter months, and that's November through March. We do allow a few vacations, but the majority of that, so over 1,200 hours in available vacation time for our staff has to be used this summer. We also have staff out for medical issues. And the same equipment is needed for both storm and tree remediation. And we're investigating using temporary help to accomplish many of these tasks. So we'll start with the September storm damage. The town sustained approximately $3.7 million in damage between the trees and the storm remediation, as well as the staff summer vacations. We do not have enough staff and equipment to provide assistance for both the trees and storm remediation. And this doesn't even take into consideration our day-to-day maintenance that has to get done. So far, with the storm damage, we've repaired the Robbie Road culvert. Majority of that was done by a contractor. We've partially repaired Parker and Sims gravel roads. We've done that with in-house labor. We've restored Lumberyard Road, the embankment erosion, installed the catch basin, and we did that work as well. And then we've done the shoulder work on the edges of our roads that were washed out, placing stone to prevent any more damage. But really, we haven't even touched on the majority of the damage caused by that flooding. Tree care and removal. Our challenges are the infestation of oak trees due to gypsy moth and associated drought conditions, also the emerald ash borer. We estimate a minimum of 1,500 trees. Again, it's not a static problem. As we progress, and you'll see in the spring, additional trees are gonna show up that haven't even been on our radar. We've been using Island Tree at $180 per hour, but that requires 3 staff members to work alongside to maximize their efforts as well. Once FEMA work begins and staff summer vacations, will not have enough staff and equipment to provide assistance for tree removal as well. We have no commitment from the state to aid in the tree devastation at this point. Right now, we're continuing to use Island. We found the most efficient way to do it is go road by road. So we've tackled a few roads, but not even put a dent. On average, if we remove 4 trees a day at this point. So it's slow going, and as soon as the trees leaf out, it'll even slow the progress. Other towns, Haddam they increased their budget by $20,000 to a total of $70,000, but most likely we'll have to seek additional funding. Essex, they increased their budget by $25,000 for a total of $65,000, and they have a tree warden that continues to monitor. East Hampton's budget's unchanged at $47,000. Do we want to stop and have questions or just wait?
I'll have you do your presentation, then we'll come back if that's okay.
That's fine. The transfer station, our challenges are revenue collection that corresponds with the intake of bulky waste. To determine an inexpensive way to cover bulky waste to protect from the elements before it's hauled away, thereby reducing the weight. We need to establish a system of controlling access and collection of appropriate fees. We need to find ways to increase our recycling rate to decrease the cost of waste removal. The cost of waste removal exceeds that of recycling. There's a possibility of a petition to call for a town meeting to ban the proposal of a paid bag system. Our current status is we're nearly closing in on rerouting the traffic pattern to better control access to the bulky waste area. Looking at updating currently installed camera system for monitoring of the facility. We've begun weighing town waste disposal trucks to track the cost of what's leaving our facility. We will randomly weigh our vendor that removes our waste and recycling to ensure that our billing is in line with the weights they're reporting. Repair and removal. I had proposed to include in this budget 2 full-time employees and to purchase a bucket truck so that we could do the tree removal in-house. The Board of Selectmen put forth a budget that would essentially be up to $250,000 for tree removal. And that would fund approximately the removal of 375 trees. We tried to come up with an estimated required staffing requirement. It's estimated that Public Works will require 7,848 man-hours from May to October to accomplish just the following: the completion of Petticoat Lane, roadside mowing, street sweeping, drainage maintenance, and tree removal. Our historical available man-hours during that time span is 4,200. Because like I said earlier, we limit their vacation during the winter. So that leaves a shortfall of 3,648 man-hours. And that's even before we perform any of the flood damage remediation. So I guess in closing, with the budget that now is in your hands, we are significantly understaffed to take on the workload that we have. So it's more, there's definitely a shortfall. So not everything can be completed.
Okay. Thank you. Before we go through the board and ask questions, I do want to point out that we, as a board, really do express our gratitude to all the work that all the Public Works employees are putting in here. This is sort of the perfect storm, if you will, based on all the things that are happening all at once. This is not business as usual. The significant storm, the trees, and the like are causing us to have concern on those other projects. So we respect and understand that. And at the same time, we want to do our best to try to figure out a solution that will help solve problems and yet minimize the impact to the taxpayers. So we're going to do our best to try to reconcile that with you tonight. So why don't we go item by item and kind of pluck them off and see where we stand. Storm damage, as I understand, we're not, I mean, you're utilizing existing staff for the storm damage repairs. Tell me a little bit more about in terms of, I guess where I'm going on this is you have limited staff and you have a gap in hours. So as a director, you now have to decide which projects are going to be first versus others. And I don't know what your triage is right now. How do you determine where you're going to put people and what you're doing? Because you have multiple things and multiple demands with not enough hours. So what is your thought process on that? And then I'd like to start with the most important one. We said it may not be storm damage, whatever you think.
Sure. Right now, we were all hands on deck, the entire crew, from September 25th to November 2nd. We focused 100% on basically doing temporary measures so we wouldn't have future damage. Like if we left the shoulders neglected, then the pavement would have started failing. And so for that time period, 100% of our resources went to that. then, you know, unfortunately, winter comes and pretty much December through, we were lucky this week, we got some work, but the majority of the winter is plowing and preparing for that, maintaining the vehicles, and there's not much maintenance work going on during those months. So just now when, you know, the winter's getting better, we've tried to do some maintenance, but we have a tree crew, so that takes 3 of our staff. And then we try to do smaller projects with the remaining 4, trying to focus on drainage issues.
So right now, if I were to understand what I think you're saying is probably the most important issue that if you were to look at all of these issues you're facing, your most important one is you're gonna dedicate your resources first to trees. Is that correct?
Well, until we.
If given you unlimited, what would be the first most important thing that you're thinking you have to do? Is trees?
See, and that's what's difficult, because we're put in a hard place. The trees, that could be life-threatening. But you have a gravel road that as soon as thaw hits, is gonna be impassable. So there will be people stranded in 2 feet of mud. And it's different than past seasons where you always have a mud season and people kind of accept that. The roads are so deteriorated because of the flood damage. And that's the majority of our damage, is to rebuild those roads. So I want to prioritize trees, but people aren't going to be able to travel the gravel roads.
Now, you mentioned earlier in your first slide that you're facing a problem because you have some people that they may be out for whatever their medical matters, as you put it here, and you're investigating utilizing temporary help. What is the status of that? Is that included in our budget that we're receiving? So you said, okay, I need to get some temporary help and I have a gap of so many hours, I need to hire someone for that. Did you consider that in this at all?
No.
Now, on the other side of this discussion, I spoke with Cindy in preparation for this meeting. I understand that those folks that are going out on medical leave, the town will have to pay for their salaries during their, pay the medical leave portion, but will we be paying their entire leave, or will insurance cover some of that and it'll free up cash for us?
I don't know how that works on your end.
So if they have accrued time off, we'll be paying them. And they could choose to go on to short-term disability, but if someone who's accrued that much sick time, we'll be paying them the full time.
Correct. What I'm trying to get is, let's just make the assumption we're gonna pay. Do you have an idea what the accrued time off would be for all the people impacted? Because that's the worst case scenario for expense from us, right?
Well, and without addressing employees, we have a combination of medical and workers. So the workers is a little different. I can give you an analysis.
And let me explain to you why I'm asking this question. If there's a gap, in other words, the person utilized all their sick time and then they're on an insurance plan, we're not paying them any longer. Someone else is paying them. Well, that's dollars that I believe you should consider for utilization to bring in temporary people. You know what I mean? It's money we budgeted. There's no reason why you shouldn't have the staff there to help you. And that's why I'm asking that question, and if it's been considered in this budget.
We've not factored in any temporary help, but I could do a quick glance today and I can give you more on Saturday, but I would assume we'd be paying. I think the safest assumption in building the budget is that we're going to be paying our employees that are out.
Agreed. So we would have to look at what their total sick time is and say, okay, that's the worst case amount. If they're out longer, and that's a question we don't know, that's money that we're not spending that I believe that should be allocated. We're budgeting for it. We would have spent it anyway, and we have a need, we would just spend that money and give it to you. So that's kind of my line of reasoning on that. And I'll talk to the board members and let them share their thoughts if there's something different on that. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go through, do we want to go, I don't know, help me through this, guys. Do we want to go through item from item and ask questions as she went through her slides? Or do we want to kind of go in general? Which way would you prefer?
I suppose the discussion might be more orderly if we went through her presentation and then took questions that,
Okay.
is that,
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite each member to go through, we'll start with the storm damage slide, and I'll invite each of you to go through that and ask questions as you see fit. I'll start with you, Harvey.
okay. You mentioned what progress has been made to date. I assume you have an inventory of all of the work.
Correct.
Is there some way, and I assume FEMA's gonna ask for this anyway, for our Saturday meeting perhaps, would it be possible to have a complete inventory? Here's the damage, here's what we're planning to do to fix it, and here's some estimate of when it might get done.
I can give you a damage inventory.
Okay,
At this point, I don't have staffing to tell you when that will get done.
Can you
But you
prioritize,
could tell
can you
us-
prioritize the projects though for us? Say, in other words, you might say, this is the most important because it has an impact on safety or other issues. You must have something like that also. You must have an idea which ones you want to start
I have
first.
an idea. I have a damage inventory, but then it will basically be determined on staffing, on what we prioritize.
Okay, continue, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
so you're gonna prioritize in terms of available staffing?
Well, obviously, we'll do anything that's dangerous to the
Okay,
public safety always comes first.
okay. The last item here is that you've sort of stabilized roadside erosion, it looks like, by use of stones. And you say that this is a temporary solution. Will your inventory of those projects indicate what the long-term solution for that is?
I don't know if anyone's noticed, a major road that you see this type of stone is Clark Hill is one, Tater Hill, where if you're driving, you see about a 1 to 2 foot wide strip of 2-inch stone right along the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
It, varies between 8 inches to 2 feet deep. We put the stone there to stop further erosion. We just have to compact that and dress it with topsoil so it stabilizes. It's
Okay.
like on Clark Hill, the stones will get washed out in the road, so it's not a safety concern at this point because it's stabilized, but you want to put a topsoil and seed so you have vegetation to hold everything in place.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce?
I certainly don't envy you in this area. So I think what Harvey was getting at, if I'm not mistaken, is he's asking you to come up with kind of a punch list. What roads do you think you're gonna have to hit first?
Right, I mean, I can prioritize just in the fact that you would like every road in town open to traffic, so you're looking at Neptune Avenue, that's still closed, Hemlock Valley is still closed, and then Ackley Road is closed.
So you wouldn't do anything with those?
We would prioritize,
I'm sorry, you'd prioritize those or others?
well, no, I would want roads opened as soon as,
Okay, well, that's,
Ackley we can do in-house, Neptune has to be contracted out, so,
I would
as
think
soon
of
as FEMA approves that project, which I've spent about 30 hours a week in the past month, every week, 30 hours, preparing paperwork for them and showing them all around town, so hopefully that all gets approved as eligible funding on their part. They'll fund 75% of the project.
so my thinking would be if the road is closed, it's not gonna hurt anybody. So you'd go to the roads that are traveled and kind of get those doctored up at least in a
See, that's
kind of
where
order.
priority gets, someone's priority
Yeah,
might
I
be
know.
different.
Depends on where you live, I guess, right? Yes, please.
Listening to Mr. Dutch's comments, in addition to an inventory, it might be helpful if you made a little notation, will be done in-house, plan to use outside contractors, so that we have some idea of.
Right, that's where I was going next. In other words,
Sorry.
what
I
road you,
could put the possibility of doing it in-house, and then what has to be contracted.
Yes.
right, in other words, there's no way we can do this, we don't have enough days in the week, fingers, hands, feet, whatever. Okay, I kinda get the picture where she's gotta go from here.
Yeah, a couple questions, Beth. Put it all together, kind of, on the 3.7 million, relatively confident we'll get 75% of that back.
I do.
Okay. And at the end of the day, you've accumulated and allocated wages and equipment usage and materials toward that 3.7 million already
Right,
that you're logging.
our in-kind force account labor equipment can be applied to the 25%.
Okay, so we're confident that we won't have to come up with additional funds beyond that 3.7.
No, not at
25% of
The 25%, you don't think we're gonna have to come up with that, or we do?
I think one of the reasons that the Board of Selectmen took FEMA out of the budget is to take them on a case by case. Because some of them will have a greater in-kind than others,
Right,
depending whether
like
we're using.
Neptune Avenue will be completely outsourced to contractors.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. I did some quick math on your labor shortage over 6 months, about 3,648 hours. So even if you had all the money to do all your projects, you're still probably four full-time people short for those 6 months to do the work. Is that roughly what you're estimating?
I would say from May to October, we average 5 staff a day.
Okay.
4 to 5.
Right, and
So we're shorthanded to begin with. Because we tried to break it out a little bit. Two staff are in a roadside mower from mid-May to the beginning of October. That's all they do. So that's 2 out of the 5. So then I'm left with 3 people to do the majority, the regular maintenance. We still have to street sweep and do drainage. So we're short-staffed in the summer on a good year. And then you throw in the trees and the damage.
right, so at least 4 temporary people for the summer. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
May I piggyback off one of your questions before I move on to Todd? FEMA, we've now spent a fair amount of time and money and resources on the projects thus far, and we do get that credit. Can you tell us the cycle of their repayment, if you will, when we should see money sent back to us on it? Are you aware of this at all? Are you familiar with
They
this?
won't really give us a time frame. Right now, we have a project manager assigned to us, so I've been dealing with him directly. We had site investigators that came for 5 days, and we had to show them every location and the damage associated with it. And they had to get out and measure and assess and estimate. So their work, the investigators' work, has to go through 3 tiers before it's approved. So right now, we've submitted all our force account and equipment and anything we spent from September 25th to November 2nd. And that's roughly a credit back to us of $208,000. So maybe we'll see that in 2 months, I'm not sure.
Okay. I'd be interested in just keeping us updated with that pace cycle, not that you go through.
And just to add to that, they were extremely impressed with Beth's submission. They got some kudos from FEMA on the thoroughness of what she had given them.
And then Todd, I'll give you one second, but I do have another question off the FEMA. So if I were to prioritize here, what you said you would do as a priority, public safety is number one. And then impact to future damage is probably number two, and then just basic road, like to the local economy, probably your third step, right?
Right, the majority of the work is reconstructing our gravel roads. And that's the biggest dollar amount.
So right now, though, because this is helpful for us, I think overall, you've taken care of all the issues on safety. There's no safety issues that are out there related to FEMA.
Correct.
And you've also looked at the major issues. How far along are you with the things that might cause further damage? Like you mentioned, if you don't put the gravel down, the road will continue to decay. What progress are you on that level?
I think everything is pretty stabilized.
So we're stable right now.
Stable.
So that's really great, and I again, I want to give you kudos for that, because those are the two most important things. The rest are all planning going forward. So, all right, I just wanted to get the answer to that. Todd, I'll let you go forward. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. This appears to me to be basically a major construction job. Yes, it's remedial, you're fixing things, but it involves a lot of construction. And you estimated 3.7 million. Is FEMA okay with that estimate? They think it should be lower or higher, do you know?
When they were here doing our site inspections, they were on board with pretty much everything that we estimated. It might come in, this might be high, we estimated on the high end, because obviously you don't know what you're gonna encounter when you get into a job and if you have to contract it out or not. So, they were in concurrence with us on the damage and estimates of what we showed them.
It's just, and time is a factor here too for cost. The 3.7 million, is that assuming you're gonna get done in 1 year or 3 years?
That was an estimate at the time of the damage, so if material prices increase, that is not factored into that at all.
Yeah.
But this is an estimate, Todd. I don't believe that we're held solid to that estimate. It's just a qualifier.
Right,
correct?
because let's say
Good to
3
know.
years go down the road and we decide we like Neptune Avenue closed, let's just say. They're not gonna hold us to, it's basically.
Or if the price of the repair of Neptune Avenue for some reason goes up,
Right.
and we put the money in, they're gonna pay us the
They'll pay us
75%.
What, 75%?
So it's a moving target. I think this is just to help us for our budgeting purposes.
Okay, yeah, because speed of the work is a time and cost factor. If you play your cards right, you stretch the job out, it may end up being the minimum cost. If you wanna do it fast, get it done in a year, it's gonna be a little higher cost. But then you have the factor of inflation, the cost of fossil fuel, construction costs, both buildings and building roads is directly related to the cost per barrel of oil. And right now, the cost is going up.
Right.
So, that's
So I'll
something
just
that
give
can,
you a quick rundown, like, anytime FEMA will reimburse us, I have to physically show every invoice, explain every item, what staff was on that site doing the work, how many hours, what equipment was used. I mean, they break it down, and then that's what they base their 75% on. So whether we do that now and our staff is paid X amount, or after July when they get their annual raise, it's factored into that salary increase, so they get,
so it's flexible, it moves with the job.
correct.
Job goes up, the reimbursement goes up.
And our
Job goes
25% goes up.
Okay, that takes a little bit of the risk out of the job, financial risk. That's good. But in my experience, the government is a poor lender, but hopefully we'll do all right here. Now, what, oh yeah, engineering costs. The engineering costs in that 3.7 million?
We estimated in, yes.
Okay, have you done any engineering so far?
We are preparing a request for proposals, qualifications.
So you're gonna put that out to bid, and the lowest, the best firm at the best price, that kind of thing?
Right.
Okay, do you have to pick the lowest bidder, or it can be the best person, the best?
No,
Best
usually
price.
it's requests for qualifications on engineering firms, so who we feel would be most qualified.
Thank you, that's good. Now, being like a construction job, to do it really efficiently, both in terms of manpower, time, and money, you need to find a critical path. And I don't think you're quite there yet, because you need to prioritize what things you want to do first, second, and third. So I advise you to determine a critical path. Your engineering firm, if you hire them, whoever you hire, should be able to help you with that, because that can really save a lot of money and save a lot of time if it's done correctly. Every successful building project finds a critical path. The ones who are good at it, and good at getting critical paths, are the ones that will build a good building and a good road for minimum cost. Okay, and as far as in-house versus out-house, on this construction job you have going here, all different kinds of roads, and stormwater drainage and so forth, you're gonna have different types of jobs with different types of skills required and different types of equipment required. So have you, I know you got your folks and your equipment, I think, have you matched up those jobs you anticipate to be done with your people, and there are other jobs we're not so good at or don't have equipment for? That's best to be outsourced, because a contractor who does that for a living will probably do it a lot faster and cheaper than we can do it, because we have to learn as we go. We're doing new and different stuff. So I advise you to do that, and again, your engineering firm will help you do that. Now, I guess that's it. So I got an answer on the cost. The 3.7 really means is a first put. It could grow.
That was a rough estimate.
Yeah. And that includes engineering. I've got to answer that question. And you're gonna hire an engineering firm. That's good. When do you plan to take on an engineering firm? When do you plan to start with them?
The engineering firm is only to design Neptune Avenue, Hemlock Valley, and Bonfoy, not to address all townwide issues. Those are selective projects.
Okay, now I have to ask the question. Of those selected projects, what's the total for them relative to the 3.7 million?
We estimated Neptune Avenue at 500,000, Bonfoy at 65,000, and I think Hemlock Valley maybe 125,000. I'm not positive.
So that's
Those are
only,
very brief.
that's only 1/5, less than 1/5 of the
gravel
job.
roads are the majority of our damage, dollar value, because Mitchell Road alone, we lost in some areas 5 feet of material off the road. So we pulled that material out of the woods and put it back on the road, and it froze solid for winter, so it's passable right now, but we have to excavate out and rebuild with a proper base.
Yes, because it has to pack correctly. It only can pack correctly if it has the right material. But what you're telling me, but another
So the
thing,
majority of our damage was to our gravel roads.
yeah, that's the next question. When you repair these gravel roads, are you gonna repair them in the same design, the same manner, so they'll wash out again in the next big storm? Or are you gonna do, action to prevent that kind of damage happening again?
Action to prevent that.
Yeah, because now you're
With our
gonna need
existing
engineering
gravel
help.
roads, we've never had a roller to compact it, so we'll go out and regrade our gravel roads as needed. It's definitely done once in the spring and once in the fall, and then throughout the season, but we don't ever roll and compact it. So of course, when we're reconstructing from scratch, like when we did Parker Road, we had a roller. And if you've driven the upper section of Parker, you can definitely tell it's stabilized all winter and is in good shape.
So, I'm a little bit impressed here because the big jobs, what I thought was the big jobs, is only about, my math says, only about 1/5 of the total cost. The rest of gravel roads, which would be fairly speedy and simple to fix if all you're doing is putting the gravel back where it was before.
I think her issue, and then I think where we're going on this, is really just not having the manpower to do all those jobs.
Correct.
Okay,
It's not that it's difficult, but to do a gravel road, you have one person in the grader, you have one person in a roller, you have two shooting grades doing handwork, so you're looking at least 4 to 5 people.
so if we contracted it out, it could be done this summer.
It could, but then we would have to, and that's where I think I need direction from the Board of Selectmen, where that 25% that the town has to match is coming from.
See,
It
the
would be
challenge with
much
that is that we
easier
have to
for
come up with
me.
that difference right now.
It'd be much easier for me to contract it out, but I don't think that's the direction the town wants to go in.
Well, first of all,
I need direction from the Board of Selectmen on how.
Well, let's talk about that. So if she had so and you're saying, if we were able to say, okay, we want to do it all in 2019, and we had the money in the budget, the solution for you would be, you can now do all these things, do a contract, all of these options, and we would only be paying 25% of it. And so, do we contemplate that? Coming up with the financing for that, because you're saying you're not gonna do it, you're gonna outsource it and you can get it done for the,
Well, if we contracted it out, we'd have more control over the schedule.
what, I'm confused, I'm lost. What are you talking about contracting out, the gravel roads or the big jobs?
I mean, the Neptune Avenue has to be contracted out. We don't have
Yeah,
the equipment, the manpower. Same, depending on what they decide on Hemlock Valley, stabilizing the embankment. I don't think we have the equipment in-house to do that work.
but the challenge we would have is we would have to fund all 3.7 million, and then we would get the other balance back.
That's why they.
That's what our real problem
Were
is.
extracted from the budget, so as Beth goes through FEMA, you see what FEMA will agree to or on your best assessments, and maybe on, I don't wanna say case by case, but in sections, determine whether it's a contractor or in-house, take that to the town meeting. And also, I don't think Beth and I talked about this, some of what she might think of priority now as spring moves forward could shift.
Well, I know that certain roads are gonna be impassable. Salem Road right now is
that's
in
right.
bad condition.
The roads that are closed. They really can't get any worse.
Correct, so we
And,
could
and
leave
to
them
Bruce's
closed.
point, by being closed, they're not really big a safety, they're a pain in the neck, but sure, I think the neighbors like it because there's less traffic on the road now. And that's a dead end, so that's a definite advantage.
I mean, I think the thing you said that's important to me was that you have everything stable, right? There's no risk to people's safety.
Right.
And there's no risk to further damage
That's
based
the
on what
worst
you get
that
done.
could happen, our cars will get stuck and have to get
Do you have
towed out.
delayed response time from emergency personnel, fire, ambulance, police? Any concerns about that?
There
Forward.
could become, we're doing what we can by putting straight stone. I know Harvey, you probably drive East Shore. You have to pour straight stone on the completely rutted out areas to make it passable.
This is a closed road you're talking about, that you had put
No.
straight stone in?
No,
Okay, but my next point
so
is,
those are temporary measures that
Yeah.
it's kind of just wasting, to be honest, it's,
yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and that's the point I was about to make, in that the roads that are gravel, that need work, the sooner we do it, the better, because we have a heavy rainstorm again, it's sweet washout time again, gotta go back and redo it. So those are like living, exposed organisms that have to be cleaned up. Whereas the roads that are closed, and of course, there is concerns, it's not a perfect world about that, but I would think we'd want to clean up the gravel roads as fast as we can, that's my point.
Now, next,
To save money, if anything.
let's just imagine we had all the resources we had and we could just say, all right, here's the money to start on the project and we'll wait for FEMA later. That would mean that your staff, because you're outsourcing it, is now walking away from that work. And would you be okay? I guess where I'm trying to go is what would your man hours look like as a result of not having to do that work? Would that change the man hour requirement? In other words, would we be
No,
caught up
it's
or are
the
you still gonna
one-
have a gap?
We still have a gap because the one, Cindy and I sat down and I think my estimated required staff in the last page, we're still at a shortfall even without him from the work.
We haven't factored FEMA in at all.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next items, because I want to make sure we cover all of this. We have only a little time.
Did we ask the selectmen what their thoughts were as far as contracting out or in-house or a combination? Is that what the,
I'm totally in agreement with that.
what was the rationale that the selectmen came up with in your meetings and so forth? Were you thinking that Public Works would not get involved deeply into the repair of the roads and contract it out, or were you thinking that they would get in and hands-on do some repairs themselves? Because it sounds like there's not enough people to go around here.
As with what's happened this past year, absolutely. There isn't enough manpower. And we're still working that out, trying to figure out how much can we do. And now we're getting a very good picture of it here, that there is a limit to what we can do with what we've got for staff. And we're gonna have to prioritize and decide what we want to do.
Okay.
We can.
I think what the logic was had a lot to do with the financing. So
And the
based
financing-
on the refunding and the fact that if we did it the way we're doing it now, we would get those monies. It would almost be like we pay a certain amount, we're already into it, I think $250,000,
It
so.
could be 6 months to it.
So we'll be getting that money back that we can completely turn around and just
And we
keep
would
using on
roll
the
the
project. So
money
we wouldn't be out that much money from a financing standpoint. I think that was part of the driver that led the selectmen to the decision of doing it in-house. Now, I want to point out one other thing. The charge that we get, that they pay us back is based on the highest cost. So if we're using our own personnel and there's benefits and hours and all the other pieces, it's a higher credit that we get for the FEMA calculation. So let's say we could get it done cheaper outside, we could hire temporary people to come in and do that. It would probably be more wise for us to use our own staff, because it costs more for them based on being in the union and the hours that, the benefits they enjoy and all the rest of it, and their tenure and whatnot. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but the jobs that they are normally doing without a storm year is
Aren't
gonna
going
go-
away.
is
We're not
gonna go
getting
away.
it
So
done.
I'm thinking they should just do what they did without a storm year, the best they can with what they've got, and we fund enough to get the roads repaired by a contractor. I mean,
So
that's-
the
I just
question
didn't-
is,
Wasn't sure if I heard that or not.
no, that's not the direction that everybody's going, and I think
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
something worthy of discussion. The other part is, your budget includes items that, in an ideal place, you would be able to complete with all the man hours if you had them, but you won't be able to complete all the things you budgeted for.
Correct.
So therein lies the opportunity, right? She's requesting dollars for items that we can't do unless we either hire more personnel or we do what you're suggesting. So that might be the place where we
always-
figure that out.
We always spend roughly between, I think I put $500,000 in to have a road reclaimed, milled, repaved. With the shortfall, I don't wanna be on record saying that I would ever suggest not doing a road, because our roads, especially after all the water and the freeze thaw, they're in rough shape, but with the manpower we have, there's no way
Right. That's-
So
would be a
where I think you're saying then is if that money's been allocated, instead of giving temporary personnel, maybe we just contract out the roads now and that'll free up our personnel to do more of their work. Is that
That's-
kind of
that's
is
what I
that the
was-
dialogue that we're discussing right now?
Yes, and I was trying to get the answer for the direction that Beth was looking for, so we know
Right.
what to fund.
Right, we're budgeting without a plan,
Yes,
Is
I'm kind of
basically-
trying to get a,
basically what the story is.
Okay, so
And that's.
And
been
that's a
the-
hard thing to
That's been
do.
the difficulty, because without funding, it's hard to, and without staffing, to put a budget in front of you that I'm 100% confident. Right now, what's in front of you, we don't have the staffing to complete, like you said. So,
And as Beth moves forward with some of this and understanding the gravel roads and pieces get approved by FEMA, as you're approaching the situation, you'll have a better idea whether you might be able to do it in-house or it has to be a contractor. And then the boards would understand what the match is in that regard. And I appreciate the rolling of the monies forward, but to be clear, we have the cash flow to manage this. We don't need to rely on FEMA to reimburse us to keep going. We can sustain it within our own cash flow.
so we wanted, I mean, if we wanted to go on and hire out to get this work done, we could do that without really large impact in terms of, based on the return. We're taking it from the unassigned fund balance, how much are we drawing down on, I mean,
You would be, first of all, each one would have to be approved by town meeting as to how much you're gonna appropriate, which draws down fund balance. So you would know that on a project by project or coupling projects together. You would know what you would be required to expend. But contracted services will cost us more money. Because we won't have the in-kind match. Not saying not to do it, but
when you say in-kind match, what do you mean?
so we're not matching our labor and equipment. We're contracting.
but if we're doing in-kind work, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and then you're
Understood.
gonna hire somebody to do that?
It's, to go back to what you said, Beth is not in an enviable
No.
position.
We're trying to help.
We can crank the numbers though, because this is like it's an iterative solution here. We have basically more unknowns than we have equations. So how you solve those problems is you plug in numbers and you convert on a solution. That's what the value of computers, they can do a lot faster than we can by hand. So we need to put out, we need to do it, get a quote, get quotes, get some idea how much it's gonna cost for contracting, how long it's gonna take versus in kind, and then see what you get for a solution, and then come back to us, and we work out the finances, and maybe we'll think of something else, or maybe it'll be a good answer right off the top, I don't know.
I don't know that you're gonna get your wish in the time horizon that we're
That's right.
we're under pressure to achieve. So we
Pressure
need to
comes
make
is a
some,
thing.
we need to do some creative work ourselves and figure out what the best course of action might be. Given what we have right now, we have a big challenge. We have projects that we have to focus on. It looks like we're doing it in kind and it's forcing us not to do other jobs. So we have two choices. We either fund those put some money for those projects now, we do it from outside contractors, and then focus our personnel on the work that we have, or we hire temporary people to support you when we do the in-kind work.
Just a quick question, like roadside mowing, what would, compared to doing in-kind for FEMA versus hiring someone to do roadside mowing, or hiring someone to do drainage maintenance versus, I guess, what would be the best bang for the buck? What would we do? So if we hired people to come do roadside mowing, will we,
roadside mowing is expensive, because one year, I have to go back and look at the numbers, but our mower was out of service. It's expensive. Like that, definitely we're more efficient in-house. We have 2 machines. And it also, you have staff that now have done roadside mowing 5, 6 years. You know, our town isn't easy. We're property lines, start and stop. They know to go around the heirloom rose bush that hasn't come into bloom. So,
but it's a good benefit if we're talking to citizens who may ask those questions and say, well, this is the most financially beneficial way for us to choose to do something. Whether, just looking at what you can and can't contract out.
That's right. To your point, Cindy, as I said earlier, we have different types of jobs, not only for this construction, but also how you do your regular day-to-day work. Different workers, different equipment. And we need to, because we're manpower short right now, given the challenge of the job, we have to do a better job of matching our people and our equipment to the jobs being done. And sometimes, and contractor can probably do it. Some jobs, they're matched to it. They can do it a lot faster. I think we also have to look at what we got out there. We've got all these gravel roads hanging fire. And as you pointed out a few minutes ago, that you've done temporary stuff that will wash away again if it's not secured properly. So we're kind of in the middle here. The cart and the horse is midstream. So I think my gut feel is that we need to get the gravel road secured. Because if we don't, we're gonna pay double. Because we're gonna be back doing the job again. So that's my gut feel.
Now, given where we are now, here we are approaching the end of March. If we said today, all right, we're gonna budget, we know 700,000 is for those specific projects, right? The Neptune Avenue and the like. It's like 3 million are these gravel roads. Am I kind of accurate given the numbers you gave to Todd? Just ballpark numbers, pretty close.
Around 2 million was gravel roads.
And then,
You have to look.
And then there were other assorted projects as well.
all right, so if we had the ability to say, okay, we have the funds, we're gonna give you $2 million, hire outside folks, that's gonna free up your staff to do these things that we just discussed. Would we be able to get those, how long would you be able to get those roads done? How long would it take? Can you get them done this summer? Is it, given that it's March, would you be able to hire people and get the quotes and all the rest that you need to do in order to hire people? Or would it still not happen this year?
I think we could do it before snow falls. Contract it out.
Before winter, basically.
Right.
So we'll be winter damage, further winter damage with snow and rain. Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have enough in terms of roads?
I'm good, thank you for letting
But
us
we
get
could,
off on
if
that.
we took our staff, I mean, yeah, it's hard, because then do you contract out the tree work? Because you don't get an in-kind match for that, so there's that all up in the air as well. So which is,
Well, that's gonna be our next, so why don't we just move forward to the trees, because I think that's very important. So now we're talking about where we are with the tree work, and to me, given your priority that you shared with us, I think public safety is one, keeping from other damages two, and then economy's number three. So this one, I think you deem very high on the public safety issue, correct?
well, it's, you have trees that are dying at an alarming rate, the ash trees. I mean, I don't know if anyone's noticed, they're like losing their bark completely, and once that happens, they start to get brittle fast. So it's so much that even if a tree was on the opposite road of the wires and we could push into the woods, we used to, as Public Works, be able to do that. We'd have a backhoe that would, push it. We'd have someone cutting in, but now limbs are falling. So we can no longer.
Too dangerous to work
It's too
under the tree.
dangerous to be under. Everything has to be bucketed down.
And your process as it stands today is, you're just going road by road. You're not driving down the road and saying, okay, these are probably the worst ones because they might fall sooner than later. You don't know that, but you're going road by road. Is that explain to us how that's working?
Tree warden has always been put on the Public Works Director, and typically it entails a couple phone calls a month. I have a tree that I'm concerned with. You go out and look and determine. You're spending $25,000 tops on tree removal. Now they're being reported at such rates that you can't even, like between FEMA and everything else, I can't evaluate priorities. I go out and look quick and say, okay, there's an immediate target and we'll focus on that tree. But as far as it might fall on the road, no, we're not bouncing around because it would not be efficient at all.
So I looked at this comparison and we're struggling with this part because it's so unknown. So I asked Cindy to find out what other towns are doing, and then I asked Cindy to tell us what we're doing. So these were some of the preliminary. You didn't share what we're doing now, but I did get this information prior to the meeting. So last year, we budgeted $25,000 for tree removal. And so far, we've spent $56,000 with just, not even the in-kind part that we provide, but just with Islam. And then my rough estimate, given if we continue on that path, it's gonna be more like 75 in terms of what we're actually spending for trees based on this year alone. The request, was the request 150 or 125?
Board of Selectmen's proposed budget was a total of 150, which is an increase of roughly $125,000.
Of what was budgeted, but we're already ahead, so it's gonna be basically double what we're doing now. So then I did the math real quickly, given what you just shared with us, and it looks like, based on the number of trees per day, times the number of trees that you said that we're getting, and it looks like we'd get we'd get all 1,500 trees done, and it would take us 4 years. That's kind of your strategy, correct?
Well, that's what I've been given, so.
And that's at an assessment of 1,500 trees, and the situation continues to worsen. So it's not like you can take off 1,500 and be done. It's a continuous problem, just so people are clear, it's not.
Well, I have to give you a little some pushback on that. They're not gonna all grow, maybe just me being ignorant. But if we cut down all the trees in question, where are the other ones going to, they're not gonna come back. I mean, isn't this a problem that we should be able to get our arms around within the next 5 years and then kind of be on with it?
Right, but the 1,500 trees that was an estimate of the disease dying trees. But then you have other factors, some of the oak trees might come back, they might not. So the maple trees are definitely stressed recently with the high groundwater table, so that's the only thing I'm saying. 1,500 was what we estimated,
Just on the ash and the gypsy moth problem.
and just what was dying at the time. You're seeing a lot more devastation than, and that truly is an estimate. It wasn't a survey done.
And also, and Emmett, I think, alluded to it, it's not like Beth can go out and count all the trees and mark them, then we've assigned ourselves that liability.
Our insurance company was adamant that we not do anything like that.
Correct, but you can definitely get an assessment. Assessment isn't getting yourself into trouble. I mean, one would be reasonably assessing a risk that they could potentially have, right? You have to do that. You don't go out and spray paint, all right, this is gonna fall. But you
Right,
could
but
go
I
out and
haven't
assess the problem.
inventoried our ash trees. We have not gone to that.
And you
extent.
don't
You don't
generate
have the
lists
manpower.
that
So I remember reading the article you shared with me when that happened, and it discussed maybe having some volunteers, some community organizing, people getting together and maybe working with the town. Has that discussion ever happened about, we have a problem here, let's see if we can let's get some volunteers to go out and do that. Maybe people can go out and look and help us.
I've notified the first selectman that I can't address it myself and I need assistance, so.
This is interesting. We're here in Connecticut. We have a different look on the world. About, how many years ago we had the October rainstorm or snowstorm? We had a lot of help. I had a lot of trees down, a lot of power companies came down to help us out. Well, the Canadians came to my street. And my wife likes to bake brownies for the crews. So we got pretty popular pretty quickly. And I wasn't home, I was always working, but she learned from them that basically told us we were crazy to have so many trees close to the road. And he said, how they do in Canada, first of all, it's 50 feet back from the road, it's clear, no trees. And any power lines, 50 feet back from any power lines. But how they cut trees down up there, they shut off the power, take down the power lines, and take out all the trees in one day. Then put the line back up. That's what I did at my place, when I cut trees down at my place to build my shed. I had the power company out, shut off the power, take down the line, and they're glad to do it. I cut the trees down by myself, I didn't hire anybody. And then,
Yeah,
next day, they put the lines
Eversource
back
will
up.
not.
What's that?
We had to jump through hoops to have the power shut off for one day to remove one tree,
Probably
because it
right.
was touching the primaries.
Hmm,
We had to
interesting.
notify 50 homeowners by certified mail, provide generation if they requested it. It's not
Not worth it.
an avenue you can go down.
Okay, because that's probably gonna be talked about at the public hearing, but, so we can't do it because of the requirements in the state. Yeah, I said we're in a different world. But 4 trees a day is pretty darn slow.
Well, there are days where we will take 12 trees down, and then there's a day where one large ash tree takes an entire day. So that's an average. And it depends, the accessibility, if it's over the lines, if you have to rope everything down, or if you can drop it in the woods. So we need to do averages, because
So
there are
we're,
days we'll take
from a
50
financial
down.
perspective, with the increased amount provided by the Board of Selectmen based on their budget, how would you use that? Would you use it all for private contracting? What would be your logic in spending the additional dollars that are being offered? Because there is an increase.
150,000?
Yeah. How would you use it? Would you use it all for contracting, or would it be this in kind? What's your thought process on?
Well, if I had the staffing to support it, the most efficient avenue is to have the bucket truck with one operator and one ground, the $180 an hour, and we accompany them with a backhoe and trucks to load out the wood, so you're not chipping it, you're not wasting time doing that.
So Island right now is, would you get somebody else, or would you use him solely and just fill up the week?
Well, 150,000 would give us about 92 days with this.
Could we take a step back?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Let's take a step back. Haddam has bumped their budget up apparently by 20,000, Essex by 25,000, and East Hampton isn't bumping their budget up at all. Is it just that we're more risk averse than they are? And that we want to get all this done lest a tree fall on someone's cat? I mean, what's the rush?
In talking to the finance directors in these towns, not all of them had the gypsy and the ash borer issue, some towns did, we have both.
Okay,
And it also is landmass as well, in some, and Haddam indicated that it,
well, Haddam's not gonna cut any trees in the state forest, and that's, what, a half the town, so.
Yeah, that's true.
but they also indicated that the Board of Finance, the finance director said that, you know, you've increased this 20,000, but please be on notice that we most certainly will be, there's a certainty we'll be coming back for more.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I guess that we have 1,500 trees that need to come down right now, and it's all about speed now. We don't know the cost, but we certainly want to get the job done really fast. I'm hearing that message. It's all about speed, right? Have you asked Mr. Island what can be done to increase the speed? Are we too slow by being so neat and tidy, cleaning up the logs? Can somebody go in and just drop the branches, drop the stump, and then we can have a crew come and spend 6 months cleaning the roadsides up, or giving the wood away free, firewood away free? The question I'm going to ask, basic question: what can be done to speed up the cutting of these trees? Now, there's some new equipment out there, and they've got boom cutters now, where a man sits on the ground and it's got an extension. It's like a big crane. It's got a hydraulic motor at the top with a radial saw, and just cuts the trees standing on the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, and everything drops down. Cuts them in pieces really quick. That's a new piece of equipment that's out there now. That's something that I think we can use here in East Haddam. But I'm sure a contractor has it also.
Well, I mean, I guess to his point, it may not be popular to.
Residents are very protective of their properties. So we thought we could save some time by chipping the brush and blowing the chips, fanning them out into a heavily wooded area with not a house in sight. And that was not acceptable to that. And we find that more and more. If we drop a tree, and everyone knows there are stone walls throughout our town, and we drop a limb and what looks like a farmer's stone wall, 4 rocks fall off. They're looking to have their stone wall rebuilt. So you're looking at a level that, or if we do drop the trees and we don't pick up the wood within 3 days, I'm getting calls, Emmett's getting calls.
All right, so that begs the question I have is,
Okay.
are any of these trees the responsibility of the property owner? Like, where does our,
Oh, we're stopping at the property line, for our right of way. There are ones that, you have a wall here, and this is the road, there's an ash tree that's dead as can be that's leaning, gonna fall on the road, but we don't, we're bypassing those.
How many property owners know that?
Most property owners know that they're liable for
I
that.
don't think so.
It's been in the articles in the paper.
I don't think so.
One thing that some of what you're talking about is a feller cutter, which is, reaches out, grabs it, chops it
No,
off,
no, yeah.
and picks it in, and I can't remember the name of the company out of East Windsor, South Windsor. I contacted them, talked to them about it, and said, what about going in and doing this, going down the road? As long as there aren't any wires, it's okay. We can't use that equipment if there are any wires at all. And there's an incredible video they had of a pine tree they took down. And they've got 2 sets of arms just reaching and grabbing and hang. Big 40-foot rig with a wood chipper into it. So they're collecting the chips, get rid of them. And one hand feeding the thing, the other one grabbing the next branch out of it, cutting it off, handing it off. It's remarkable to watch. Not suitable for what we're doing here. A great idea, and if you've got 40 acres of wood you want down, this is the tool to do it.
Well,
And
Mr.
it
Chairman,
might be in the town's interest to consult with arborists that do this on a daily basis, and that's their specialty, and
I think so. I
get
think,
some input from them.
I agree with 100%. We need to do all we can to get knowledge on what it's gonna take to speed up the process, and then how much that's gonna cost, and we can make a decision.
And what our residents are willing to, I would love to leave the wood because it would be gone.
Yeah, certainly going on my road. Okay, but that's what we need, Mr. Chairman, I think that's what we need. We need some intelligence on how the process can be sped up.
and again, we're gonna be responsible for creating a budget to help through this process, so
Right.
this dialogue is healthy. We'll be continuing it on Saturday, I believe, when we get done with, speaking with public safety, but I just want you to be able to speak with Beth about her ideas and where we are, and so we have a better sense of what we have going on, because we have to vote on this budget. Okay, before we move on from trees, any more comments, any thoughts? Sir? No? Greg?
Yeah, I just think with the money proposed here, it still requires 3 full-time employees of her crew. I don't think.
I mean,
there's
I
even-
think
I don't think we're close to being where we need to be.
One of the
To get anything done.
one of the things that Cindy and I, and this is something that we'll discuss in more detail, but one of the things that Cindy and I noticed was a lot of the projects that are on the, that you've budgeted to do will not be able to get done because we don't have the personnel. So we might be able to say, okay, we're going to have to forego putting money for this, because we know we're not gonna do it, and maybe we spend that money on giving you some temporary help during that time. You know what I'm saying? And would that be an acceptable solution for you, knowing that, all right, you know you can't do all the projects, maybe we forego something for now, maybe a capital piece, and then we could take that money and spend it on some temporary manpower to help you as we go forward, perhaps working on the trees. So you get temporary people working with Island and moving that along. Would that work with you? Because I want to get a sense of that.
Our roads are in need of repair, but realistically, with the manpower that I'm given, there's no way we can do another road like Petticoat.
Right, so that's money
And
that,
I hate
we have that
to
expectation.
say that because there are roads that I could name off that are in dire need, but unless I have additional staff, correct, there's no way. It would be
But we
carried
budgeted
over.
money for the construction of that project, and if we're not going to do it, then maybe we just come to grips with that, and among ourselves, we have to have that dialogue, but then we could take that money and say, all right, let's give you some money for personnel, and understanding that we're thinking temporary, and you hire staff to help you out, and we stay within the budget and give you what you need. Would that work for you, actually, is really my bigger question.
Because I hate saying that we won't do a road, 'cause that puts us behind, but we're already behind, so we have to.
And I think overall, we have to have the dialogue that you discuss, whether we figure out where to give her money to say just outsource this stuff, or do we come up with some alternate
And
strategy?
that's what I can give strategies, but I think with, the devastation our town has seen, as Public Works, I'm one person. I don't feel like I can tell you my suggestions, but I really think direction needs to come from the Board of Selectmen on what the priorities for the town are.
So
I
I,
can definitely give my recommendations, but
but, you know,
Needs to
to
be
be quite frank, I'd like to hear what they are. What would be, if you were trying to fund this and you had only limited resources, what would be your suggestion? I would be very interested.
In writing, so we,
Oh, yeah, if you're coming up with that punch list, that would be, you could do it then. You don't have to, I don't want to put you on the spot right now, so if you could do that for us for Saturday. That will help us in our narrative as we go through discussing what's the best way to help fund you. So, you know, and don't, you know, don't worry about saying, you know, if you say that you're trying to help prioritizing, you're trying to give us guidance so we can make better decisions, and we rely on your expertise. That's all we're doing. We're not gonna hold you to and say, you told us to do that or whatever. We just want you to give us some guidance so we can make better decisions. That's really what we wanna do. All right, we covered trees, we covered FEMA. Big other item, transfer station. Let's move forward. Did I miss anything on the trees that anyone else wanted to cover? Okay, let's go to transfer station. Talk to us about that.
One caveat on temporary employees, we do have to get agreement with the union in order to do that.
And again, I put that out there. Whatever is decided, we're just gonna give her the funding and she's gotta figure out the right course of action. I also wanna point out, when we start talking among ourselves, we're just trying to come up with creative ideas. We are respectful that we're the finance board and we're doing the funding. This really does not fall in our scope. We're not trying to run the selectmen, nor are we trying to run your department. It's really what you're doing, and, you know, arm's length, we just wanna help fund it. And so it's a dialogue. That's an appropriate introduction to transfer station. So,
Yes. As far as the transfer station, budgeting wise, we basically are running into issues, with the recycling aspect that we will come in July 1, when we negotiate our waste disposal contracts. That historically, we've been given a credit for recycling, and that's reduced over the years. But come July 1, instead of receiving a credit, we'll actually be charged $40 a ton. So that probably is the biggest impact to the budget on that aspect. So I know we're looking to change routing, which doesn't really impact the budget. That's just the logistics to try to recoup more of the revenue. There's quite a discrepancy on bulky waste, what we collect and what we're paying. And that has been noted, but we're really trying to get to the bottom of where those lost revenue is happening.
so some of the feedback that I've heard in this narrative was it's because of, you know, it's impossible to really judge, because even if you're being fastidious about measuring every bit and sending it out, the fact is it rains and all this bulky waste gets wet. So and our discussion was, we look at other towns, we look at Haddam, for instance, and we see they have a protective, you know, small cover over the top of their bulky waste. What would it cost us to do something like that?
2017, we went in for steep grant for that. and it would have been $500,000.
It was part of the steep grant, it wasn't the
Yeah.
whole steep grant,
There was a good chunk of it,
yeah.
at the grant right there.
I called Haddam on that as well. And the finance director was not there when the pavilions were built at that transfer station, and they bonded for a whole host of improvements. And she did not have the data to extract the coverage costs, so she couldn't quantify that for us.
That just seems extraordinary. Am I on another planet? It just seems like a lot of money for what I'm thinking would just cover up.
No, the steep grant involved, much more extensive than covering. We could do, we're just looking now on inexpensive and it's hard, safety reason to cover with tarps. We just, the way the bins are set up logistically. But, you know, we could go with heavy-duty canvas covers or buy new containers that have covers right now. We rent containers from Willimantic, so they don't have covers. So there's a
Punch holes in the bottom, let the water.
host of ideas that we can, building a lean-to type structure, we have not looked into.
But I didn't even think of what you just said, though. So again, it's you knowing your business and understanding it better than we do. We see a gap there. We're worried, and this is a general concern, that we're paying for water, right? We don't want to have wet, bulky waste. So you're suggesting that we're renting those containers, and we could get them with covers, you know, like the ones that are in the parking lot of my office. They flip over the top, and so what would that involve? That seems like a real easy approach to somewhat solve this problem.
Right. I think first we want to determine if we're missing revenue because people are sneaking by the attendants and just bypassing that avenue before we spend exorbitant amount of money to.
But what would be the cost to have covers on the
Well, you could
containers?
go as simple as tarps and try to, that would be under $10,000.
But every night, someone would have to
It's not
cover
every
them
night
up.
they'd have to cover them and uncover them.
Has anybody asked a builder, this is my problem, what can you do for me?
In the line of a lean-to, is that what you're suggesting?
They
We have
build
not
all
gone
kinds of
out
stuff
for
all the
pricing.
time. Well, there's the problem. How would you solve it economically?
Am I to understand that perhaps you don't think that's as much the problem, the wetness of the
Yeah.
stuff as it is that it's not getting paid for in the
I
first
think
place?
there's a lot of unknowns, so before we just start throwing money at something.
Yeah, in other words, the roof isn't, you can
Let's
get rid of a
find
lot
out
of water for
exactly.
$500,000. Does that roof sound feasible for $500,000? Does that seem?
That included construction of a tipping floor, that was not,
Okay,
I
so it's
would-
not that much, okay.
There was a lot of,
All right.
maybe 45,000 to cover.
That's more like
All right,
it.
that's more like what I was thinking, okay. When I heard that other zero on there, it just made me think, oh.
No, that was a tipping floor and reconstructing.
So in your slide, you indicated a number of courses of action that you're taking. Are all of these actively happening? So I see the cameras as one of them. We noticed that gap when we saw the dollars. I think the question that we're bringing to you really is, you're identifying solutions, are you implementing these solutions?
I've been told that a camera system is going to be installed, I don't know where the funding,
the facilities director is getting quotations for the camera system. There's an existing director of operations, sorry.
but not for scales and.
They're not for scales and stuff, so he's investigating what that would cost, and back to what Beth said, I mean, looking at other sources, they're weighing people as they come in, they're checking as it goes out before spending a lot of money.
Every one of these items look like a great solution to the question that we had. I'm just saying, other than the camera that we don't know for sure, are all these other things getting implemented?
The rerouting is going to be implemented, let's say in the next few weeks, as soon as, yeah, we can have the parking lot repainted and that sort of thing, so. And we are, be diligent about now the schools and facilities and even public works, when we dump in the bulky waste, I've been instructing everyone to go over the scale and get a slip of no charge, but that we know exactly who's dumping and whatnot, so we can at least chip away at that number and see realistically what is water or what we're missing. And we're gonna spot check Will and Andrew on their weights.
All right, great. I'm gonna bring it around the board to ask questions. I'll start on this side. Okay, why don't you start first, Todd?
Yes, sir, thank you. So what exactly is the problem? We're still 80% we're not been paid for, or 20% short still, like we were last year? As far as getting paid for the,
For bulky,
for bulky, yes.
it's closer to 75% we're not collecting.
Yeah, 75% now, it was 80%, good. Slight improvement, but we have no idea what's causing it. We only have guesses as to what's causing it, right? The root cause is unknown. Have you calibrated the scale?
Yes, that's calibrated annually.
At one time, but how does it do continually?
It's pretty close when they calibrate it, it's right.
I know, but it could be a scale that when they calibrate it, it's fine. But after a couple of weights, it starts migrating away from the real weight. So I'm just asking, I think you need to, scales are important, obviously, because that's your measurement device. So I think you need to have somebody look at that to make sure it's measuring weights consistently. When a big truck comes in, does it bottom out somewhere, and now it weighs the first 5,000 pounds of the truck, and because it's bottomed out, it doesn't weigh anymore, that kind of thing. I think you need to check it because that's kind of obvious. I don't think Willimatic's cheating us, to be honest with you. That'd be a stupid thing for them to do. Water is a factor, but it's probably only like 10% maybe at most. But it's worth covering. I'm not disputing that. It's worth covering. So the next question I have is that was timing. You're gonna put things in place, rigid things in place, firm things in place in 3 weeks. So every vehicle that comes in with bulky waste is gonna get weighed, whether they get it for free or because it's a town function or not. Every vehicle's gonna get
That's
weighed.
implemented now.
It's implemented now, okay, because I saw the cones across the road a couple weeks ago, but then I went back 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I went back a little bit later, and the cones were gone. It's all open road, so when the cones are there, there's nobody in the weight house, and when the cones,
No, the cones should be there all the time now,
that's good.
but we have people driving over and through the cones. It's just, it's almost comical. Not
It's
really,
ridiculous.
but
It's not funny, but it's.
Okay.
with someone staffing the scale house and they drive through. So we have been talking about, we don't have, for our attendants, they're not police officers, so we have to have an avenue of enforcement. So we're gonna start taking license plate numbers and handing them.
That's what you gotta do. Another thing about scales, when I used to have a long time ago, years ago, when I was driving truck, we had to put the truck in the right location on the scale. Otherwise, it wasn't gonna weigh properly. So, I know lots of different trucks go on that scale, including mine, some pulling trailers not. I think that one of the possible root causes of the problem is how the weight is placed on the scale. I don't know if your people have been trained in the use of the scale. I'm pretty sure that's one of the factors. At least it was when I was weighing trucks.
They've been trained, but we'll discuss that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, that's all my questions.
It's all been covered. Thank
All
you.
right, Bruce, it's your show.
So the camera is basically a threat to someone to but don't misbehave, otherwise we might embarrass you. Is that,
Right.
okay. I just,
Because we don't have an
because you're not gonna
enforcement,
have someone there to watch cameras, so.
but even, I don't even know as far as enforcement, so if someone does go through the cone, what we can do.
Exactly, so, all right, so I have nothing against the cameras, it just doesn't seem to me to be, I think.
It's to keep people honest.
Exactly, that's what I'm getting at. The rerouting, I think, is gonna be your key, because now people can't just
What's on, but
I-95 it right past, they gotta kinda go through, and that'll.
It'll be a little bit more difficult.
Right, so I think that's gonna help. The recycling part of it, we've gotta educate our people, and I know it's been going on forever, but this, Tracy brought it up, the dumping of what
The
came
bottles
in
and
on the-
cans.
Yeah, you hear tinkle, tinkle, tinkle into the compactor of all bottles and cans. We've gotta try to do, as a town, we've gotta try to do a better job of educating our people to say, you know, by you not recycling, it's costing us a lot of money, because we're paying to get rid of this stuff at a different rate than it is to get rid of the normal garbage, so I'm not sure what we can do, maybe some little stories in the newspaper might just, you know, get it in front of people. You've been doing that?
We've had 3 this spring.
Because I mean,
And we're trying every avenue. We just added a textile bin to hopefully divert some of that material out. We're gonna start recycling the plastic film, so we're trying to give residents every option to not put it in the hopper, but some people, it's a lifestyle, it's not the.
yeah, I know, you're not gonna change some of it, but if they
We're trying to
recognize it's
give
costing them
everybody
money.
an option, and if we can get the schools involved, that.
The next
always
generation,
helps.
yeah. So I think the rerouting is gonna be our answer to the bulky problem, and then I'm not sure about the water. I mean, the jury's out on that, isn't it? How much really the
Well, I mean,
moisture.
just think of a sofa dry versus soaking wet.
Or
It ain't
cardboard.
gonna Quadruple the weight of that sofa,
Cardboard too sucks up the water.
and sheetrock, so
Free
there are,
bottle and that.
Okay, so that's.
But are the cover containers an additional cost since we don't own them?
well, right now, we're gonna go with the tarps, it's a,
Oh, so you're moving forward to do that anyway?
we'll do tarps, because at least then it'll give us an idea.
Exactly, yeah.
You only
A
have
cheap option and see, it's labor intensive with the tarps, but
it's not every bin that needs a tarp. The metal bin, you probably wouldn't tarp.
No, windows get wet too. So on rainy days, we can't dump?
Gonna cost you more.
Where my mother lives in Georgia.
That's right, it costs us more rainy.
You cannot on a rainy
They
day?
won't take paper recycling on a rainy day, there's certain things they won't take on a
In
rainy day.
Portland? Are they
No,
covered?
no, my mother lives in Georgia, and there's certain things they won't take on
yeah, I
rainy
don't
days.
think the residents would
Yeah,
agree to that, but at least we can cover it.
It's a particular residence in this town, don't we?
So I think we're getting.
We're moving, we're making progress, I agree. Anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Sir?
Yeah. The risk of making my friends in town feel bad, if you don't like obeying orange cones, why not, the next step, in my mind, would be an electric gate that the attendant has to open, and if you haven't gone over the scale and paid your fine, your dues, the gate ain't gonna open.
I've made recommendations, but the gate hasn't been received well.
Well, it would have been received well in one place. The running a transfer station, there's transfer stations all over the place, all over the country. There must be some enterprising person who has printed up some business cards, having run several transfer stations, printed up some business cards that say, you got troubles with your transfer station, call me, and I'll come down and take a look for a fee. And if there aren't such people, there's a business opportunity for you.
Right, but we're a unique situation, and it goes back to just how we've always done things in this town. We're, I think, the last town that allows commercial haulers in our transfer station, and that's a decision that as a town, it's acceptable, so.
No, but there
we're
may be
unique.
operational things, not policy type things like that, but operational things that someone who has a lot of experience managing transfer stations might be able to help us with. But I'll leave that. And one other thing, it slipped my mind. That's not good.
While he's
Oh,
thinking.
yes. No, I'm sorry. Explain to me the bag system a little bit. I buy a bag. How do I know what to put in it?
You can put anything in it.
You put whatever you want in it, but anything that goes into the hopper needs to be in the bag.
So you can put recyclables in a bag, but you're paying for the bag, so you don't want
So I'm paying for having
you
them
don't want to
take
pay
care
for
of it.
something. It's a
There have been case studies of towns that have implemented the bag system, and their recycling rates are around, like ours, 25%. As soon as they implemented the bag system, they're upwards of 50-60% instantly of
And
recycling versus MSW. Without, and another big concern is, then you'll see in a rural community littering, illegal dumping throughout the town. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont has all bag systems and have not encountered those issues.
so now I've put my stuff in the bag, and however it gets to the transfer station, it gets there. What happens to it then?
It's the same as it does now. Well
Does it get
managed waste.
compacted?
That's my question.
Does it get compacted?
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Why didn't you just ask
It
that?
will go right in the hopper the way it does now.
Yeah, yeah.
Theory being less goes in the hopper.
Yes, because, yeah. But then we will continue to repair the RAM and all. I'm
Or
just
you could-
asking.
Well, you have this, it all depends, and that's where, again, this is, depends where we move forward on this. If a bag system is implemented, the haulers originally said they would not require their customers to put all their
Because they'd go
waste
direct to,
in a bag, so they would directly, they'd leave the transfer station and haul
to wherever.
to wherever, and if that was the case, we could then switch from the hopper to, just like single stream, the 3 compacting bins,
Okay.
have 3 compacting MSW like Haddam does,
Mm-hmm.
and not have a large scale hopper,
Okay.
but that's,
so we can eliminate the need for the hopper if we go to the bag system.
we would still
Totally.
utilize the hopper until it failed, but essentially you wouldn't need it.
It
You
would
could
get-
use the self-compacting units like the single stream.
Okay.
And even when you did use it, it would get less wear and tear, I would think. All I'm doing is squishing orange peels versus squishing tin cans.
Bruce has another question.
Just curiosity, would our vendor that takes away the recycling start to police that even more closely, because they may not want some of the stuff that we consider recyclable, which really isn't? You know, a lot of stuff people recycle that's not
They police
recyclable.
it now pretty extensively. If we have large items that should not be in recycling, we get fined.
Yes, I'm afraid if people will start recycling things that,
And that's
Aren't
where the staff will have to be standing by and watching.
And I have one last question regarding kind of all the step to put in for implementation, I have, someone picks up my trash, so I don't use the transfer station to know that the answer, maybe others do. Are you implementing the stickers now? Does everyone have to have a sticker in order to use the transfer station?
They are supposed to, yes. We've instructed the attendants to make sure. But I cannot say 100% of the cars. Again, there needs to be an enforcement aspect to it because there are people that refuse to put a sticker on their windshield. Because now there's a plastic coating
So if,
on new cars.
it
so I
sounds
don't
to
know
me
why-
that one of the things you might be missing is
Is an
support from an enforcement element. And maybe we're just gonna have to go to the Board of Selectmen and ask them what it is that we're gonna do. Is there an ordinance that we need to pass in order to fine them, if it doesn't exist now?
Right, because the attendants.
Is there something like that now, Emmett?
And people get extremely confrontational and nobody should have to have a resident swearing at them and in their face. So they will ask and ask, but at one point when they're just getting berated, they're not gonna ask that car again. You need a sticker.
Do we have an ordinance
So-
like that? Do you know of that, Emmett?
Requiring the sticker,
Yes.
we've required them, I don't know if there's an ordinance in place.
Is there an ordinance to provide a fee or a fine, if you don't have it and you berate it and, you.
I'm trying to think now, I don't have it in front of me.
We don't have it?
I don't have it in front of me, but I have read it recently, and I believe there's a fee on it. It's online, I could pull it up if you wanna see it.
I'm just curious, I mean, you're saying that you don't have any legs to make this, to enforce this,
Right,
so
the
people are.
majority of people will comply if you confront them, but you still have that other group that
We'll run over your cones.
will run over the cones
With no sticker.
when you're standing there
In
watching
Colchester.
and they just flip you off. And I don't expect my attendant to run after them, because if they're willing to do that, what will they do if you confront them? Not really.
No, I mean, that to me is a law enforcement issue, right? So we have to say, all right, you're violating the
And that's
law.
I'm not saying that's the majority, but there are those instances that the staff won't enforce it, because it shouldn't be required of them.
Okay, how we doing? Transfer station, all done?
I'm good, thank you.
I have a few more.
Okay.
I'll take it quick.
Just mindful that I am terminating this meeting at 9:00, so.
We won't take that.
I don't care where you are.
Eastern Standard Time.
First of all, has there been a sign put up at the entrance to the road, the transfer station road, that says sticker required? I haven't seen one.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea, because here's what I believe, it's not enforcement if it's not 100%. Because it's not fair for us to comply, and the guy next to me does what he wants. It's just not fair. And so, everything that has to be done to enforce the stickers, because there have been people from out of town dumping stuff up there. Haven't seen that, and the last time I saw it was about a year ago, and I've been seeing it since, because those people don't do it anymore, I guess because I talked to them. But anyway, so I think you need to put a sign up, you need to make people aware, they need a sticker. And you're right, most people will comply, but we gotta make sure all the people comply. And I don't think you need an ordinance to have them comply, because this is a requirement to dump their waste at the transfer station in town. It comes back to
Right,
money,
I just asked what enforcement avenues we have to turn them away.
because only taxpayers, only residents are allowed to dump there, because they pay in their taxes.
I guess the ordinance that I was suggesting is, what if they do all those bad things that she was suggesting does happen? How do
And like I
those
said,
personnel
that's the
refer them to
minority.
the police and get them a ticket under what?
But-
Like, give them a
What
ticket.
rules?
I understand, you're looking for a legal
Or
aspect.
if you ask, tell a resident, the cardboard goes over here and not in here, and they look at you and just go. I mean, there's no, you can ask and be polite.
You have to keep asking, and I guess as citizens, we can help you guys out as well. I've done that already a couple times, One was a true guy, didn't have a sticker and shouldn't have been there. The other guy comes on weekends from Long Island, and, so I saw his New York plates, all his New York stickers. I said, wait a minute, that's gotta be, what's going on? Turns out he owns a cottage.
Pretty soon he's gonna be paying tolls and he won't be coming.
That's
here.
right, that's true. The second question I asked, or the third question I want to ask is money. The bag system's gonna be a new system. Right now, we budgeted, you've allocated, you want a budget of 530,000 for the year for the transfer station, something like that, big number, which includes this loss of 75% of not the bulky waste not being paid. But at some point, there's gonna be a bag system. That's gonna be different money, I would think. So the question is timing. When do you expect to implement a bag system if the town approves it? A year from now? So it's gonna be a next fiscal year, not this one coming, but the one after that, we'll have a bag system?
Again, that's not my call. That comes from the first one.
Well, I think that's the kind of thing we gotta think
I was
about.
told in the next couple of months, but I don't know.
We are going to make that effort to have that in place.
Depends
For
if
the
you
next
get a
fiscal
petition
year.
to stop it.
Yeah, well, it's a free
And
country,
that's-
right?
It's ultimately up to the people of the town.
Yeah, I
They
understand.
want that.
Understand. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, I think we've covered all of your items. Did I miss anything else that we have? We have it all. So I'm gonna move us forward on our, agenda, and it brings us, so, a couple of things. It says general board discussion. I just wanna point out my thinking and where we are. We have public safety visiting with us on Saturday. And we know there's some, we really kind of tried to target the things that were considerable, budget changes. So, we'll be talking about that on Saturday. They'll be our first, presenter on Saturday, as you can see on the agenda for Saturday. I think we have a lot of good analysis done. My goal would be to complete all the questions that we can by lunchtime on Saturday, and then get into our dialogue on where we think we can make our changes, and hopefully tie this whole thing up without any major issues on Saturday. Is that unrealistic from our perspective? I think we've done enough research here. Are there any unanswered questions that you think that will prevent us from not getting there? Cindy and I will have some discussions on opportunities that we see that we might be able to change. We'll put up the same spreadsheet that we used before, but we're gonna go through each one of those budgets to try to figure out where we can to get that mill rate set. So my goal is to try to get it done on Saturday so that we don't need to meet next week. If, on the other hand, we can't get there, we'll be meeting on Wednesday. Any questions on that? Did it work for our team?
Your
Okay.
agenda covers every topic so that you can address them all on Saturday by each area.
Very good.
And it does have a vote on there in case you get that far.
Did we get the answer to someone posed a question, I think it was Tracy. Can you spend the money now and bond later and pay yourself back? Yes. And nod over there.
You can, but there are certain resolutions and things that have to be prepared by bond council in order to do that.
And what I'm referring to is your idea of wrapping some of those
Projects
bigger
together.
projects up.
Mhm.
So that was, I didn't think I got the answer to that question, but I did now. No, thank you.
You couldn't put that all to bed by Saturday. Obviously, that would, you know, if you're gonna do a referendum or a town meeting to appropriate for it, bond council would have to prepare stuff, but if you were to
Just
pull
from the idea of what you can.
Right.
Your question is, can mechanics be put in place?
Right.
And I think the answer, it
Sounds
sounds
like
like it
it's
was
yes.
yes. No, we don't have to put them in place tomorrow.
No.
The question was asked about the sticker for the transfer station. The ordinance doesn't specifically require a sticker. It says, however, that we can require them to present satisfactory proof of residence from the town of East Haddam. Having presented that, we give them a sticker so they don't have to do it every time they show up.
Yes.
But everyone is required to demonstrate that they do belong to town if they don't have a sticker.
And I think the deeper question is, what do you do if you don't have it? Do we have something to,
And how do you
some
deal
sort of
with-
fine that they have to pay?
With someone who's belligerent,
Yeah.
and we're certainly not gonna ask our people to become defensive and aggressive. That's not appropriate.
Okay.
Just for the most part, most people are cooperative and honest. It's kind of why the world works. But Todd's suggestion, I think, would help and be, you don't have to hire a cop to do it. To have a nice big 4x8 sign that says, for resident use only, sticker required. Right? And most people would say, oh yeah, I gotta do that.
That's a good start, I agree.
That's a great suggestion.
Again, a suggestion, you guys run your own.
I mean, one sheet 4x8, what was it?
Cheap option.
$30 we're home.
Okay, we're gonna move forward on our agenda. Last item is guest and audience comments. Is there anyone in our audience that would like to address us or ask any questions?
So is the bag system going to a town vote, or could the selectmen just implement it?
Our lawyer says that we can implement it,
Okay.
but everything is subject to review at a town meeting. So if that happens, that may be the course.
So is there a timetable when it might be in place?
That's not something that we're scheduling.
Okay.
You mean the bag system or the town vote? You said in place.
His question about the timetable, what, did you understand it as the bag system or the vote?
I thought it was a vote in terms of the bags.
That wasn't your question though, was it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of how long, you know, and I think some of you were asking too, when would it happen, assuming
The bags?
people seem to think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We've got Kristen Brown. We're going to be doing direct contact with various organizations. And then we're going to be going to a couple of forums and then implementing the system. Hopefully within the next couple of 3 months, depending on how weather goes and what kind of time we have.
Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All in